Welcome to another episode of NBRI, New Business and Retail Insights. I'm your host, Venki Shankar, Coleman Chair Professor and Director of Research, Center for Retailing Studies, Mays Business School, Texas A&M University. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome our guest today, Dr. Fred Feinberg, the Joseph Handelman Professor of Marketing and Statistics and Chair of Marketing at the Ross School of Business, University of Michigan. Professor Feinberg's research examines how people make choices in uncertain environments by using statistical models to explain complex decision patterns, particularly involving sequential choices among related items, such as brands in the same category and dyads. Example, people choosing one another in online dating. Fred also uses mathematical psychology, Bayesian econometrics, dynamic programming to develop models of advertising and consumer variety seeking. Fred is the departmental editor at Production and Operations Management Journal. He's a former co-editor of Marketing Science and is currently an associate editor at the Journal of Marketing Research. Fred is also former president of Informed Society for Marketing Science and has co-authored a textbook on marketing research. Fred has a PhD in marketing from the Sloan School of Management, MIT. Welcome, Fred. How have you been during the last pandemic year, even as we are vaccinating our way out of COVID-19?
First, thank you for having me. And I'm also happy to say I'm fully vaccinated. It's a milestone. We just got our son vaccinated. So I, in terms of COVID, I really can't complain, given all the crazy stuff that's going on in the world and people having so many economic problems. I feel we've been very fortunate. And we have a multi-generational household, from our son who's 14 up to my father-in-law who's 90. So we've really been able to help each other out a lot during the pandemic, which I feel pretty fortunate for. Yeah.
How is life at Ross been in terms of your teaching and research productivity? I see that you have a lot of papers under review or under preparation for submission. So looks like you are being hyper productive.
It looks can be deceiving, Venki. I think the reason there's so many of them is that I made a lot of progress and then COVID hit and all of the other work started pouring in and I started some new things, didn't make much progress. So, I wish it were as nice as it looks, but I've personally found it kind of difficult to do the department chair stuff and the editor stuff and the parenting stuff and get research done at the same time. So I'm really lucky that I have a bunch of really excellent co-authors, including an amazing group of PhD students right now who's helped shepherd these things along. So what you're seeing really owes more to them. And Ross has done remarkably well, the business school, during the pandemic. They took it super seriously right from the beginning. I unfortunately had to teach online, almost all of us did, but the school was really behind us in providing solutions that would work pretty well for most students for that. And we do plan to be 100% in person, like many schools are in the fall.
That's very good. And you're also very modest. I described you in factual terms. How would you describe yourself in maybe 5 words or less, if possible?
Oh, 5 words. I'm not sure I'm multifaceted enough for 5 words. So maybe non-multifaceted would be the first. But more seriously, I often joke that if people had to pick one word for me, almost everyone would agree neurotic is the best one, because I worry about everything all the time. And worrying doesn't help anything. It just makes everything worse. But there's no learning that goes on there. I think I got this from my mom. Also, I call it detail-oriented, but they call it OCD. One of my ex-co-authors, Ellie Fight, said I'm a digital hoarder because I have to mark everything exactly right. But I find it keeps me in line. Let's see, others. Loquacious, which I think is a euphemism for when are you going to shut up already? I like to just chat with people. Actually, but lastly, the thing that I have on my, I think, Twitter profile is dilettante. People are always saying to me like, how do you know so much stuff? And I'm like, because I'm a mile wide and an inch deep. I don't know anything in any depth. So I think I'm interested in just a lot of stuff, but I really wish at one point in my life, I'd love to take 5 years off and really just study machine learning so I can really understand it. But as you know, at your stage of the career, it's very hard to do that, to just take years off and learn new stuff. Yeah. So that's
but that's good. That's a very good description of who you are, and thanks for being honest about it. But it's good to be dabbling in a lot of things and being a generalist, and accomplished a lot, even with that kind of a breadth of attention that you've given to several topics. Let's talk a little bit about your research journey, Fred. Tell us a little bit about where did you get started and how has your research journey evolved over the last 3 decades since your PhD?
It's kind of a wacky story, and I'm going to start a little bit before that. I majored in math and linguistics philosophy at MIT as an undergrad, and I didn't know if I wanted to go into computational linguistics or math. And I went to grad school to get a PhD in math at Cornell for a while, and I hated it. I mean, it was just hyper abstract, even though I wanted to do algebraic number theory, which is abstract. I was like, where is this going?
It was too abstract for even you, huh?
Well, I found out I was not abstract enough for it. And I decided I was going to drop out and go maybe try to get back at MIT for computational linguistics. And I called Pete Fader, who I'm sure you know, he's a professor.
Yes, of course.
He was getting married, and I just called him to say congratulations. We were friends, and I said, hey, I'm dropping out, and I'm thinking of doing cognitive science or computational linguistics, and you'll know all the people involved. He said, cognitive science, Eric Johnson is, he's going to be here next year. He's this great cognitive scientist. Like, maybe you should come here instead and study marketing. And I'd never even heard of marketing before. I was like, yeah, whatever. Okay, maybe let's talk about it another time. And he said, I'm going to get this McAllister person to call you tomorrow, Lee McAllister. And I thought that was the end of it. And Lee McAllister, she's a professor at MIT. She calls me up on the phone and she says the magic words like, I'm sending you an application. You're coming here next year. I thought she was like this nutty person. Like, how could she guarantee all this? So I just filled it in. So it was completely random. If I hadn't called him at that point in life, I would have been doing something different. So, and then when I got there, I discovered John Little was this like incredibly famous, super brilliant guy, and he was willing to work with me. And I did dynamic programming for my dissertation because that played on my math skills. And then when I graduated, I realized when I got to Duke, it was my first job, like this method is not, it's not good to confront data with. It's like things. And I had to start like learning statistics. So I really didn't start picking up statistics until I already had my PhD. And then I moved to University of Toronto after that. And I was
Fred, that is very ironic because your entry into marketing was stochastic.
It's like a stochastic choice, right?
Yet you were basically learning statistics after your first job, but go ahead, keep going.
Just to illustrate it, like one of my favorite authors is Gore Vidal, and he had a great quote about this. He said, everyone I talk to, when I ask them, how did you come to do what you're doing? He said, the answer is always the same. I just sort of drifted into it. So when I read this, I was like, yes, it's not just me. Everybody just drifted into what they're doing. So anyway, I went to Toronto, and Jin-Gyo Kim was a PhD student there. Uli Menzerficker was a faculty. They were both Bayesian statisticians, and I started working with them, and I started reading all of this stuff, and I kind of like a light bulb went off, like this is the right way to do statistics. And I had already started working with Joel Huber at Duke, and I think I wrote the best paper I'll ever write in my life with him there, and I just kind of found it. Like within 5 to 10 years after the PhD, I discovered kind of what I wanted to do, but I had to catch up. And so I've been kind of like, trying to make up for those lost years, so to speak, ever since then. So that's how I wound up doing what I was doing. It was really by working with other people and saying, wow, this is really cool. I'm glad to find out about that. It wasn't taking classes or reading books.
But you were actually doing it while you were learning it. But that's wonderful to know. But you've been very modest and read a lot of your papers. So you've gone through dynamic programming. I remember your pulsing dissertation.
Yeah, that was my dissertation, yeah.
Right. John Little used to talk a lot about it when I visited MIT. And he used to be one of the favorite persons that he will talk about to me. So I think that's volumes. And I think we met at when I was in University of Maryland. You and Caroline came over. But you've also picked up Bayesian econometrics, and then you have since then, you've also now doing a lot of field studies. I noticed that, right? And then in terms of topics, you started with advertising in your dissertation, but then you did a lot of choice modeling in different scenarios, uncertainty. But now I noticed that you're also, again, working on a number of different issues, ranging from brand equity to gift giving or donation, charitable behavior. So, tell us a little bit about what are some of the exciting projects that you're working on, and where do you see them actually leading up to?
All of them, almost all, with very few exceptions, are linked by one thing, and it's the availability of customer records. Like, and I'm sure you try to acquaint students in your classes with,
Right.
if you have individuals over time, you can understand anything like 1 billion times better than cross-sectional data or one survey.
Correct.
And you remember back when that data was crazy hard to get. There was scanner panel data, and that was the whole world. And that's like 1 million years ago now. Like, everything is producing customer records. So whereas we used to have to beg companies for years to give us that data, now it's a little bit the other way around. They have so much data, they don't know what to do with it. So a lot of the work I'm doing now is scalable Bayesian inference. Like, how do we, because Bayes does not scale well. Like, if somebody has millions or billions of people.
I was going to say, that's an oxymoron, scalable Bayesian, right? Almost like, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot going on in that space now. One of the students who just graduated from here, Langzhu Chen, who's at UNC now, his dissertation was on really scalable Bayesian inference, particularly non-parametric inference. And there's a lot of people that are, kind of responding to that call. Because, I mean, you know all this, but people listening might not. It's like, Bayesians are the school marms and pearl clutchers of the statistical world. They're like, oh, you came up with boosting and bagging or random forest. That's great, but now let us tell you how to do it right. It's going to be 18,000 times slower, but it's going to be theoretically correct. And frankly, I think the people in machine learning have done us a real service by saying, we need answers today, not in 3 months when your Bayesian algorithm is done. So, we've moved a little bit away from this idea of, we need the full joint distribution of everything under the sun, because companies can't wait for that, right? So a lot of what's going on now, I think that's really interesting, is how do we leverage real-time customer data, longitudinal data over time on individuals to make better decisions to help them and to help the company. Like, I don't see marketing, and I'm sure you agree with this statement, I don't even have to ask you, but sometimes people say, oh, marketing, you're trying to make people buy stuff that they don't need. It's like, oh, that's just so wrong on every level. Like, because they're they're going to go away. They'll be unhappy. It doesn't serve anybody. So, I see it as, we want to use data to help connect people with products and services that actually make their lives work better. And companies don't waste their resources. Like, I always tell students, like, how many times do you see an ad and you say, I have no interest in this? So they wasted their money, you wasted your time. It's a total loss. So how do we leverage all these data? So, like you mentioned, charities. I have a bunch of projects going with PhD student Gwen An and Kian Lee, one of the ones who graduated years ago, on like, how do we do charitable donations better? Everyone agrees charities are important, but I'll bet you get asked all the time for money. And you're like, you just asked, like I just gave. It's really, there's a lot of wasted communication there. How do we make this better so that charities can get the support they need and people are not overwhelmed and bored by requests? This seems like something that data should enable us to do better. One of the other projects that this Gwen, she's a fifth-year PhD student, is working on is with a nonprofit, the University Musical Society here. They want to sell tickets to people, and when they send you a brochure, it's like, okay, here's the 100 performances we have this semester. Do you really want to look through all of that and figure out which 3 tickets you want? We can use data on gazillions of past ticket sales so that when you log in, it's like, hey, Venki, we know you. You would love these 3 tickets. Like, why don't you click here and we're done? And the problem is, I think most companies have no expertise how to leverage this individual level data plus your data to help you make better decisions. So a lot of the projects that we're doing, I mean, I can go on and on about them. There's like car data, and mobile health optimization is something that Jungwon Choi, who's an advanced PhD student also, he's working on. How do we pick individual ad for people? But all of it is, how do companies intervene in a way that's not overwhelming for you and not wasted?
That is very interesting, Fred, because what you're saying is ideally marketing is the business process of matching customer needs with the firm's offering. So you're saying that now increasingly with the increased data availability and the new methods available, that we can now better match this. And part of that is recommendation systems, or recommender system, which is really based on analysis of the past behavior and past choices. That also links to what you were originally investigating, choices under uncertainty and choices under different considerations and different environments and contexts. So in a way that you were actually able to blend some of your previous research to what may be emerging with the different kind of toolkits now we have at our disposal. So walk us briefly through maybe pick one or two of your research, and then see what are some of the substantive insights you're able to get out of doing these new sets of research, whether it's scalable, narrowing choice, recommendation systems or offerings, insights. Maybe a couple to talk about it in detail.
I'll pick one that's I'll pick it because it's a bit odd, but everyone finds it interesting. About 7 or 8 years ago, I met Elizabeth Brooke, who's a professor of quantitative sociology here at a seminar, and she's like, sociologists just don't focus on individual choices. We don't really have the data, but I have all this dating site data, and I really want to understand how people pick spouses. Isn't that the most important decision you ever make in your life? And I'm like, yeah. If you want to look at deep unhappiness, a bad spouse choice will cause that faster than a house that you could sell or something. So we actually got some fairly quickly, and I did my sabbatical at Stanford for one of the semesters, and we basically sat in a room all semester and analyzed this choice data, people choosing each other. It was fascinating. And we wanted to say, like, what makes people attracted to one another? Can we use choice models to answer this question that sociologists have been asking for centuries, if not millennia, if you want to call them philosophers instead of sociologists? Like what, and the way they did it is, let's talk to happy couples that are married a long time, and let's look at divorced couples, and maybe there's some themes that will pop out. But as we know in marketing, you don't want to ask people why they do things, because it's not always so accurate. Like people all tell you, oh, I love to exercise and recycle. It's like, they don't actually do those things. So she's like, let's just look at the data. And we actually used all this nonlinear spline, God knows what, latent classes. And we were able to pull out very heterogeneously the kinds of rules that people use to screen one another online. And what I loved about this is sociologists really want to answer these questions. And in marketing, I think one of our claims to fame is that we really have developed choice theory and choice models beyond almost any other area of academia. I would say even more than statistics, certainly in applying this hierarchical Bayes approach. And we were able to take data from a dating site. I mean, it's right off their servers, and say to them, if you have this person, this is who you should be fixing them up with, just based on who they're, I should have mentioned, we just look at who they're clicking on and who they're writing to. And we can pretty much nail the kind of person they're interested in without asking them. So it's a little bit like a recommendation engine, but it's only using the kinds of things that they look at. And we have like 50 variables. Like, it's not just like height, weight, do people like your picture? It's like, do you smoke? Are you divorced? Do you have kids? It's tons of stuff about you, how far away you are. And what's interesting is we can say something like, that you might make you laugh. Like, if you're a guy, smoking is about the same as 3 inches in height. We can make very strange trade-offs like that.
So you came up with a system for online dating platforms that could allow their users to better target and better choose. But what did you learn in terms of how people seem to choose one another? Is there anything about their filtering mechanism? Is there anything about their preferences that seem somewhat new?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, but we wanted to call the paper, as a joke, we referred to it this way amongst ourselves as everything your mother told you is true. Because unfortunately, the results were a little bit on the sexist side. Like for women, youth and weight seem to matter quite a bit. And for men, height seems to matter quite a bit as like main physical things. But we did find a bunch of other things. We also joked about this. We called it the misery loves company finding. Divorced people seem to like other divorced people. Once you regress out age and everything else, I think it was more like, I don't want to start again with someone in a first marriage. I want someone who knows what I've gone through.
Right. Okay.
And interestingly, there are some smokers, for instance, that only wanted other smokers, and some that didn't. We were surprised by this. We thought it would be homophily, like people would like people just like themselves, and that wasn't always true. Also, this idea that men are looking for much younger women Not true. Not true. We find that almost everyone is looking for someone within 5 years of them, or more accurately, within 10 to 15% of their own age. It's like you see this in the utility function and then a huge drop off. And you hear these stories about how 50-year-old men are looking for 23-year-old women. It's like we see them clicking on their profiles, but they don't write to them. They just know that that's not going to work out. So it's a lot of the stuff that you're told really isn't accurate. The most surprising thing is there's this notion that women find it so hard to date. It's exactly the opposite. Online women are dramatically more popular than men. They're contacted radically more than men are. And this is a finding from another research group that if you look at percentiles of appearance, women in the 25th percentile of appearance are contacted as often as men in the 90th percentile of appearance. So it's kind of like a woman's world in the online dating market. I think a more accurate statement would be it's hard to find good men. I can't judge that.
So there you go. Some headlines: a few good men, and opposites attract. There could be a lot of right. Like
but it wasn't really opposites. There's a lot of homophily in ethnicity and religion. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, is it partially also due to the fact that who signs on to these platforms? Maybe people who are already looking, they have had some expectations, some experiences, and so they have already some criteria in mind, as opposed to the general population who may not be totally representative of the people coming to the platform.
I should have mentioned this. This was a pay site, which means that people who are serious, they're marriage oriented. Because unfortunately, on a site like OkCupid, which is fantastic, it's got people who are Tinder's a whole different. Tinder, we don't get a lot of. We'd love data from Tinder, but it's like swipe left, swipe right. You don't see much about the other person. Right. But on pay sites, you get like 30 or 40 variables on each person, and you can scan by them. Like you can say, only show me people within 10 miles of me. And anyway, on like a site like OkCupid, you've got people that are looking for just friends. Or one of their categories used to be, I think, monogamish. Like it would be great if I have a long-term relationship, but it would be fine to have casual dating. And that's too many different things going on.
Right.
So we were pretty much looking at people, I would say, from their early 30s through their mid 50s, very marriage oriented, because we would call them pretty serious. They're paying every month. But I agree with you. The dating system in general is the Wild West in terms of what people are looking for.
But this is excellent insights. Now, talk a little bit about some of your other projects, if you want to. Some of the more recent ones.
Bunch of them. The other one that I don't want to say it's like better than the others, but the one that I think goes over really well is we all know in marketing about conjoint analysis. It's like another one of our greatest hits. It came out of psychometrics, but it was really Paul Green and Sina Srinivasan that really brought it into the world. So it's a marketing thing, and it's used in tens of thousands of products a year. But the one thing that it's not good for is style. And everybody knows that how products look is important. And you can put pictures in a conjoint, but you can't put 500 different pictures in a conjoint. That's too many levels. So there's been this really, I would say it's a wall. Like, how do you deal with product styling? And you can say, it doesn't matter. We'll just say that this car gets 30 miles a gallon. I think how cars look is important. I think how most products.
So aesthetic design is not very easy to implement in conjoint. I get it. Yeah,
it's not. And some people have tried to do this. Eric Bradlow worked on it. Ellie Feit worked on it a few. But so this is not me. A group out of engineering here that I work with.
I noticed that you work with the mechanical engineering.
Yeah, it's from the design science program. We have a PhD program and now a master's program in design science. And they have to learn engineering and psychology and marketing and statistics. They learn all of it. And we started this now quite a while ago, more like 5 or 6 years. Can we create something that it's conjoint online and it generates images? And when you click on something, it uses machine learning to generate new images in real time. So it generates not just an image, a 3D movable car. So if you say, I like this car, it's like, oh, okay, let's move the other car a little and make it a little bit better, or let's make this one a little bit more expensive. How do we get the right trade-offs? And you don't have to teach anybody anything. It's like, here's a car, you can drag it around, you can look at it in 3 dimensions, pick the one you like better, it generates new cars for you. And it works. We can actually do 3D real-time design optimization completely inside Conjoint, where there's a product topology model basically for the entire car. And
I assume this is fantastic, because I assume that this is a general principle. You may have done this only for cars, but you could think of this being useful in so many situations. For example, retailing. A retailer can build or design a store layout, can also try different bundles and assortments and see how people might be inclined in terms of preferences and utilities, so that you can optimally price them also in conjunction with the design. So it looks like it has wide usability in different situations.
As long as the space, a whole store is a very high dimensional design space.
Right.
But for
maybe
most
you
products,
just break it
like
down into
appliances, for instance, like it really matters how appliances look. Sometimes people will say, this didn't get good reviews, but it will look so nice in my kitchen. And to just say that doesn't matter, that's just wrong. So what's nice about this is if you design things with CAD, computer aided design, you already have a product design model, and that can be put into one of these product topology models. The only thing is really setting up the machine learning system, which these very, very smart mechanical engineering PhDs figured out how to do. And then in real time, we do machine learning and then hierarchical Bayes. It's all the greatest hits of statistical modeling.
Very
marketing.
good, yeah.
And at the end, it's like, Venki, this is the car that you like best. This is the car, but do you want to pay for it? So then we look at how much it would be to actually build that. So we've been doing that for years. And what I like about it is it's slick. It actually solves a real problem and anyone can try it. It's online. Anybody can go there and try this out and see that it works. And the cars evolve over time to something that you like.
But can I also take this and apply to, let's say, apparel design, fashion design? Yeah, because
absolutely.
looks like some of the principles are common. Well, one of the questions is that in Conjoint is the overwhelming number of combinations that could overwhelm a respondent. How do you solve that in this? Is it more adaptive so that
it's adaptive. Oh yes, yeah, totally. Yeah, without adaptive, you asked the right question. Without adaptive, you can just forget this. So it might say something like, let's say it's a shirt for you. It might be like, he really doesn't like shirts with this texture. So he wants things that are very smooth and cleanly woven. So we're just going to move into that part of the space. It learns this about you over time. Or for cars, for instance, Venki likes a car that's sleek. He doesn't like boxy cars. Otherwise, as you said, the space of possible car designs is preposterously large.
Right.
And so without the adaptivity and without a machine learning model to update the parameters in real time, because we have to go back to the server and optimize the next two car designs using utility balance and a bunch of other stuff within 2 to 3 seconds. So it's tough. It's a tough problem, and they cracked it. But if we had super fast computers, we could even do much
instantaneously.
Because we don't have colors or interiors. Right now, there's about depending on how you count it, there's about 38 parameters that determine the design space, but they're all continuous. It's moving around continuously. But a real car has a stereo inside, right? It has like a layout of the interior. We think we can do this eventually. It would just require a bit more computer power and work. Yeah.
That's fascinating. So speaking about these advancements, where do you see 5 to 10 years from now where marketing research is headed and how it can help managers and public policy officials make better decisions? You started with the methodology that we started with scanner data sets, and then we moved to customer level data. Now we have proliferation of data coming from all sources, different device usage, and then interaction, social data. We have these tools of machine learning, AI, plus we have all these new design possibilities that you talked about, and using simulation, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, whatever. It is almost sounding unreal, right? So where do you think we are headed in the next 5 to 10 years?
Before giving an answer, I'm really glad you said public policy people, because a lot of the stuff we do in marketing, people don't realize can actually inform, like, for instance, you want a healthier population. You want kids that don't start to smoke and people that take up exercise. And a lot of these nudges fit into what I'm going to say. I think we're at a unique time in history, like the Great Convergence. All of these data are coming together from individuals, like where they go, what they do, who they do it with. And in mobile health, which is something that we're working on in one of our projects, people actually say something like, I want to stop smoking. Can you nudge me to see how I'm doing? And if you nudge people too much, they're like, wow, what a pain. I'm done with this. And
so
if you
the
don't touch them enough,
optimal
they keep
level
smoking.
of touch.
Yes. But if you can do this for hundreds of thousands of people, you start learning what works. And what we see, I'm stealing this idea from Geoffrey Swade, who's one of the giants in our field. Years ago, he said, we're too focused on choices. We need to focus on goals. People don't say things like, I want an MBA. That's what I want to do. Or they want to have a successful career. They want to have a good life. They want to provide for their children. That's their goal. That's what they're actually trying to do. Marketing was never able to look at anything of that level of generality because you'd need 15 different data sets that come from different places. But now you have people with their phones and their Google searches. And as long as these data can be anonymized, and this is our student, Donna Turgeman, who just graduated, she just went back to Israel to take a job. Her dissertation is about online privacy with scalable data. Like, how can you tell people, please let us access what's coming off your phone, and we guarantee you that we can't use it against you. It's for your benefit. Because I wouldn't trust if somebody said, trust us, we're going to help you make better decisions. We just want to know everything you're doing and everything you're looking at. I'd be like, no way. But I do see a future where with suitable anonymization and maybe fractional designs, like we take out a few things from you and a few things from me, and using data fusion, we can stitch it all together. We can actually give people the kind of information that let them achieve their goals at
best
much
choices,
lower overhead. Like for instance,
that's fascinating. That's fascinating because if you know in the consumer behavior or the psychology or the sociology literature, goal-seeking behavior or goal-oriented tasks have been studied, but somehow in quantitative marketing, with the available data, which are more reveal preferences, we were more constrained to study what we have, and that may explain Geoffrey Swade's frustration at us restricting our studies to choices. But now with the Google search data, mobile search data, we also know their intent. What were they searching? What were they trying to solve? And also with smart speakers now, people can have a dialogue, and then you can really unearth what is the motivation behind their trying to look up a page, right? So I think you're right that maybe with all this data, but then balancing it against privacy, there may be some better ways for us to develop marketing models that'll help both the consumer as well as the firm, and ultimately it'll have strong consumer welfare implications, right? So that's where you mentioned the public policy. That's a good, suggestions for the future. Now, we also have a very broad section of audiences for this podcast. We have retail managers, we have general managers, we have public policy officials, they have former students, current students, and researchers. What would your suggestions or recommendations be moving forward post-pandemic, where we are entering a new normal, where lots of things will be hybrid? And what would you suggest to them from a learning perspective, from a growth perspective?
Well, those sound similar, but in practice they could be quite different. Just the normal, the nerd answer, the standard one right now is data is eating the world. And it used to be that many schools still do this. You get 6 weeks of data science or statistics, as it used to be called. And I think that's so grossly inadequate to go out into the business world or any job today. You're going to be confronted with data-driven decision-making. And the more you can be ready for that and take part in it and just swim right with it, the better off you're going to fit into a lot of jobs. I also think that this whole idea of you go to school and then you're done with school and then you work, that's really like a 1980s, 90s. Yeah, it's like a lifelong learning thing. And frankly, I think in 20 or 30 years, it'll be like, you need to learn Python. Here's a course that you can pick it up as you learn on the side, like on your job. It's the whole idea of I need to go back to college and sit in a room to learn Python. That's going to seem silly. So the ability to teach people at scale and to have immersive learning environments. Again, I think this is the best time in history. The pandemic was horrible, but it has grossly accelerated the development of self-motivated, self-contained learning when it's convenient for you. And that's something we've never been able to provide for people before. It's kind of amazing. Yeah.
And also the learning and working and implementing seems to be more seamless right now, right? So you can learn at the same time and you can do it. And some of us in the MBA program and at different business school programs, we talk about experiential learning. So it also fits into that mode of things. So, but thank you so much, Fred. I think this has been wonderful. Getting insights from you and your suggestions and your pointers for the future for our audience. Good luck with your continuing research, and
you too.
Hopefully we can get to know more about your research in the years to come. Thank you so much, Fred.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.